Hello everyone. Hi. Nice to see all of you here. My name is Pyle, and I will be the host of this talk with a guy whose creation I have been admiring for the last at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to get it out of my system. So, ladies and gentlemen, the creator of Strange Planet, Mr. Nathan W. Pyle.
Hello, thank you.
So you came to Vilnius. I think yesterday. It was yesterday, right?
Yesterday we flew in from New York City to Stockholm, and from Stockholm to Vilnius.
So how did you find Vilnius so far?
We ate a lot of pink soup already. We really like the soup, and our children really like the potatoes, which has been good. So we love potatoes, and they eat a lot of potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're in a very good country. You know, we're a very potato-centric country too.
There are so many potatoes on the menu. Yeah, we love that.
Well, I don't know if there are that many countries in the world that have this many potato dish.
Yeah.
Because we know as a society we grew up poor.
Right.
So
sure. Well, we love the taste. It's delicious.
Okay, so let's talk about your creation. If anyone doesn't know this Strange Planet webcomic, so basically, some people that I met, I told them that I was gonna talk to Nathan about Strange Planet, and they said we don't know Strange Planet. But when I showed this, I said, "Oh yeah, this is the comic." So the one that that Nathan has on his jumper. So that's the Strange Planet. So
yes.
It is wildly popular right now, right? Do you count? I think you have some 6+ million followers on Instagram, etc.
Right. Yes. Correct. So Strange Planet became popular when we started in 2019, so 5 years ago, and essentially it's based on the life of humans, but you're seeing it through the lens of beings on another planet. So I like to always ask, how many people in this room believe aliens, beings are out there? How many people? Awesome. Okay, and then if you all still, how many people believe that they have actually visited our planet? So, okay, right now, see? That's what I wonder. I really, maybe, yeah, I see some maybe thinking about it. It's hard to know. But what we like to think with Strange Planet, the beings we're viewing their life, and their life is some on other planet, and we're kind of viewing it, and there's a lot of similarity. They do a lot of the same things that we do. And that, I believe, is very possible. I think it's possible there's a planet out there that's pretty similar to ours. Yeah.
I think science would tell you that as well, because there are so many infinite galaxies that there should be.
Right.
There should be. So yeah, but before starting to draw this webcomic, you were also working in a quite well-known enterprise.
Oh, sure.
You were working for BuzzFeed. So
Yes.
what were you doing there, and then what was your responsibilities?
At BuzzFeed, I started to draw a lot of comics, whereas before I'd drawn other drawings, but comics were new. And I made a lot of quizzes. I don't know if you ever have has anyone ever taken a BuzzFeed quiz before? Some people?
I take a lot of quizzes.
Back in the day, yeah. So 10 years ago or so, there was the peak of online quizzes, I think. And we did a lot of those. I did a lot of visual quizzes, like, is this a sunset or is this a grilled cheese? That kind of thing. So it was really fun, yeah.
Is it legs or sausages?
Exactly, that kind of thing. Yeah, I loved that kind of thing. I think visual quizzes are so fun, and they transcend language. Like, we all think legs and hot dogs look similar, so it's fun. Yeah.
So, but how did the idea of Strange Planet came into life? Because I've read a bit, and it seems like it comes from your personal experience, basically.
Yes. Well, my wife, who was here, I think the children started to scream. So they're somewhere out there now. But my wife and I were in a small apartment, and some friends were coming over, so we were trying to clean up. We put our toaster into the closet because we didn't have much room in our very small kitchen. So we put everything in the closet, and when friends came over, the house looked very clean. And that was really the first comic. It was this idea that when friends come over, you hide everything you own, and that's the tradition for humans, to hide everything. But that's part of what Strange Planet is. It's not a bad thing that you do it. You're just showing that you're glad your friends are here. You're welcoming them by hiding everything.
Just a curiosity that happens and everyone does.
It does, yes. Yeah, and it's universal. It happens to everyone, no matter how clean your apartment is, you still clean it a little bit when friends come over. So
At some point, we had a lady who was coming over to clean our apartment. Before that, we would clean a little bit, just not to.
Oh, because the person who cleans, you don't want to be embarrassed.
I don't want to be embarrassed by. I didn't want to be embarrassed by her.
That. Yes, yeah.
So, do you remember when was the Big Bang when you realized that Strange Planet is huge already?
Yeah, in the first several months, that spring and summer, it became 2 million followers and then 3 million followers by that fall, I think. So a lot of people around the world were following it, and some people that I had admired for a long time started to notice it, which was really exciting. So that was all 2019, and what was interesting was that was 1 year roughly before the pandemic started. So in 2020, I think there was this continuation of a lot of people being at home, thinking a lot about how we are in close spaces together all the time. And I think a lot of Strange Planet comics are about that you're in a tight space with someone else. How do you share life with someone? How do you have community when it's a little strange what we do sometimes. It can be hard. Yeah.
Especially when you kind of look at the things we do, the weird things that we do from afar.
Right.
Basically, it looks so similar, but sometimes when there are some situations and Lithuanian political scene, etc., when I only realize the absurdity when I try to explain that in different language to other people. So I think that's also the point. So when you realize that Strange Planet is big, how did it make you feel? And did you feel any additional pressure? When did you realize that this could be your career?
Well, one important thing, and I would say this to anyone who's an artist, that first year of Strange Planet, I did one comic every day. And even if it wasn't very good, I would still post it. and that was good advice that I got from a person named Brandon. He made Humans of New York. Humans of New York was a big thing already, obviously, when Strange Planet was starting. And Brandon told me, don't worry. If it's not your best, you still want to post it because posting regularly every day was really important to the audience. So and his advice was right. That no one remembers those comics that weren't as good. They remember the good comics, and you should just keep posting every day. Yeah.
But also, as an artist, you don't always realize which one is good and which one is bad in the eyes of the audience.
You don't. And there were even things that changed. There was a comic that was about a being, coughing, and one being was asking, "Are you perishing?" And that comic I didn't post after that first year because suddenly there was a pandemic and the situational comedy wasn't there anymore.
Too soon.
Yeah, it felt like I was making reference to something that was really happening. So there are a lot of little things that you realize over time. The comic might be bad now and good later, or vice versa. So just keep posting. Yeah.
Yeah, but being this successful already then and now, being even more successful, do you feel any pressure? Do you feel any struggle of doing better and better comics, or even more and more? How does this creative process work? Do you ever struggle? Do you have this white paper syndrome, or what do you call it?
I do. One of the best things I think I can tell artists, if you have that, is to think of the person reading your comic as someone who reads a lot of other comics too. So on the count of 3, I want you to tell me the name of another web comic that you really like so I can write them down in my head. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, Cyanide and Happiness, right. A lot of Cyanide and Happiness. And I just talked to Rob down there really briefly. It's my first time meeting Rob in real life. It's so neat because Cyanide and Happiness is a good example of a comic that existed for a long time before I started drawing comics. And watching that success and watching the continued success, I think that's what is important, that your readers, when you're making comics, your readers are reading a whole list of comics. So you can say, you know what, I'm going to continue to make mine because a lot of people are making comics and a lot of my readers are reading all kind of comics. So they're not solely depending on me for entertainment. There's all these other comics too.
You're not their only choice of, not the only source of entertainment.
And they'll be fine, yeah. If they don't laugh at your comic today, it's okay, yeah.
when we were just talking, I just had this idea. Have you ever drawn a comic and then post it, and someone pointed out you draw something very similar already? You explored this.
Oh, yes.
This thing already.
Yes, that happens. And there was a moment when John Green, the famous author, I remember he was on Twitter saying, "Everyone's attributing this quote to me, and I don't remember if I said it or not." And I remember thinking, he's written enough where he's like, you don't even remember some of the things you've written. So I think that happens at a certain point where you create a lot, you don't remember every single idea you've already put out there. So your fans, your reader might actually point out something that you'd forgotten you'd said. So that happens.
Another very interesting transformation of your webcomic was going into, let's put it, I don't know, video realm.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
have you, when you started drawing and when you realized that it's very successful, did you think that the humor and the situations and everything, that they can translate into animation?
Yes. So I made webcomics and for 2 years before we started to seriously animate them with Apple TV. So Apple TV Plus out in California, we would go out to California and create a cartoon together. So we made a series, 10 episodes in the first season, and that was really fun. It was I got a sense of how much work it is to do animation. A lot of people work on it. I have a whole team. So before that, it was just me drawing. And then for the animation, it was dozens of people drawing, if not more than dozens. It was an amazing experience, yeah.
And how do you, what was your role in writing this animated TV series? Were you drawing, were you just writing the script and then drawing some storyboards? Or you were like overlooking every aspect of everything? What were you doing?
Sure, I overlooked everything. They would send me little drawings of the beings in their little socks, and they say, "Do you want the socks to look like this or look like this?" And then we would sit in the writing room together over Zoom. It was again during the pandemic, really, and so we would create the scripts together. So really, I was really involved. And part of that, I just wanted to learn more about television. I had many other things that I might wanted to do, but this is really a unique experience that I had to get to be a part of that.
So what did you learn?
What I learned about this was that the beings all look the same in the webcomic, and that made it really hard to make a TV show. So we had to give them accessories and give them hats and other things. But that was always part of what I think made the comic charming, was that the beings looked all the same. So, and that was something I learned. And then I also learned that when you're trying to create a story, the co-creator of the show, Dan Harmon, he really taught me a lot about the hero's journey. And in his case, there's a story circle that Dan uses almost always in everything he makes. And bringing a character around in that full circle that Dan Harmon uses, that was a tremendous thing to learn about. Yeah.
It sounds like very new things to you.
Yeah, it was new. I was making 4-panel comics, and then there was an entirely more robust vision of what a story could look like.
So how does the expansion to animation, to video, alter the storytelling possibilities of this webcomic?
Well, they had a lot of good questions for me, like what does their blood look like, and what does it sound like when they give each other a high five, and stuff like that, which in the webcomic you didn't have to think about. But now they were asking, like, is their skin, does it sound like rubber when they slap each other, or what does it sound like, you know? So there are all these interesting questions when you make animation. And I think one thing it also changed is it made me think a lot about the history of Strange Planet. Why don't they have war? Why don't they have weapons? All these things. So what happened in this world? So I had to come up with a lot of answers. And the ideas are essentially they continued to make inventions that were focused on food instead of weapons. And that was a big part of their history, that they were more interested in food than in fighting, essentially. Yeah.
This planet that you talk about, it's not Earth, right?
Right. Yeah, it's different.
It's very similar to Earth. So,
similar. Yeah.
And you have to kind of create it from scratch. So,
Sure.
Is there any in advertising business, they call it a brand book.
Oh, sure.
Where everything is written and how does it look like, how it should be explained, and everything. So do you have anything like that for this show as well?
Oh, yes. Yes. So there is an idea that the beings, you almost never see them eat meat. There is an idea that you almost never see their toes because I don't like drawing toes. So there are all these ideas I have that essentially...
sorry, in this particular thing, you're very similar to AI, you know?
Yes, yeah, exactly, like AI. AI doesn't like drawing toes or fingers. And I think that's what's fun is that you can kind of create the rules as you go. The cats always have 2 eyes and the dogs always have 3 eyes. That's just the way nature is. And so sometimes when people ask, oh, why is it this way on the strange planet? You say, well, it's another planet. It's nature, right? You can't explain everything. You can leave some things to mystery, and that actually makes it more fun.
As an author, does this strange planet looks like your ideal version of Earth, or is it something doesn't have any connection with the Earth that you would like to see?
I think it's good to say that the beings are emotionally transparent, and they can say, "Oh, I cried in the shower this morning," without ever needing to get to know someone. So I think there's a beautiful idea that if you have an emotional transparency, that would be a better world. We would have a world where you and I don't have to feel like we're saying, "Oh, I'm doing really well today." We could meet each other like we just did and say, "I'm actually really stressed right now," and there wouldn't be.
This is not my first language.
Yes, right, exactly. I'm speaking another language that I'm not. So this is a really hard thing for me. And when you get into that, when you can get past that first level of nicety, you do make a better connection with someone. Yeah.
So you would move this emotional transparency from Strange Planet to Earth if you would have a chance.
And I think when I travel, I see I'm from the USA, but I see different countries have different ideas that are actually really would be really beneficial to bring back to the USA about how much we are able to share. And even just thinking about history, I think a lot of what I liked about Lithuania already is I've talked to a lot of Lithuanians. They've explained a lot of history of Lithuania to me, and I don't think USA we have that immediate interest in talking about history as much. So I like that.
Because well, we don't have anything good to say about the current situation, so we're always proud of our history, you know. That might be the case as well. I don't know.
Well, and it could be that you learn a lot more, even just coming to a country like this. Like you learn a lot more from people like you who are able to speak, frankly about some things are not very good and some things are good. It's really helpful. Yeah.
And also, even our national anthem says that you must take the strength from your past as well. So I think that...
Is that what it says?
Yeah. There's literally a line that says that.
Oh, that's interesting. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So while adapting this webcomic to Apple TV Plus, you worked with a guy that I would consider a legend in this field. Show of hands, how many of you have watched either or both Community and Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
So this guy, Nathan W. Pyle.
Right.
I love W, like George W. Bush. This guy you worked with Dan Harmon, the guy who gave us Rick and Morty and Community and some other things as well. So what was it like to work with him?
Well, my very first time meeting Dan, it was Halloween. And he was making a robot costume out of cardboard across the table from me. He was sitting there making the costume and talking to me at the same time. And it was just such a funny moment because I look back and realize this is a man who's been able to create so many worlds and have this really childlike enthusiasm for it and yet a very high level of brilliance at the same time, adult level brilliance. So it's just an amazing connection. He knows so much television and movies. And so sitting across the table from him, I was explaining about, here's what I think Strange Planet would look like. And I think at the very first part of the meeting, he would say, yeah, I wasn't very impressed, or I didn't think this should be a show. But by the end of the meeting, he really wanted it to be a show. He wanted to work with me on it. And that was on Halloween 2019. And then in 2020, in 2021, we signed with Apple, and then in 2023, it started to air on Apple. So it started to stream on Apple, I should say. So that's where that went. Dan is now a friend, but he's such a smart person making television. Rick and Morty obviously has been just hugely successful in animation specifically. So animation, if you want to learn about animation, I'm not sure there's a better person to learn from. Dan's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you've already mentioned that Dan Harmon, he knows a lot about television and television and cinema as well. So how did this knowledge of his help you to develop the show? Because I think there could have been situations when you thought, well, yeah, we could go that way, and he would say, yeah, these guys went that way and it didn't work too well. So how did his knowledge worked on creating this show?
If you look at Community specifically, he makes references to so many different movies, Dan does, but even documentaries too. Like a Ken Burns documentary. Ken Burns does these very famous documentaries in USA. And Dan will make references to something like that. And I think he thinks of all entertainment as fair game. And I think that's what I learned from Dan, that you don't, oh, sorry, serious talking. You don't have to think only about movies or only about TV. You also can add commercials, documentaries, radio, everything. It's because it's all part of this zeitgeist that's inside of our heads. We've all seen things, even if we don't know the name of this documentarian, you might have seen the work, and it's very familiar. Yeah.
It's very interesting thought, actually, because, well, your webcomic was also part of that very zeitgeist, right. And it went through different mediums as well. So it went from internet to streaming. So actually, I think I've missed one very important step from this, from webcomic to TV series. How did the offer come to be? Sure. Were you excited? Was it the initiative by Apple TV, or were you trying to pitch it because you thought it might work?
Yeah. No, we went around to a few different places, and then when Apple TV and a handful of others sent an offer, we would evaluate. And so one of the things you look for, just as a creator, I always like to tell this too. Apple TV allowed me to keep merchandising rights, which I think that's small detail, which is really important for your creator. If you want to hold on to your merchandising rights, that's a really good idea. So hold on to your merchandising rights. So no matter what happens with the show, you still own that. So that's been really good. Apple TV's offer was just the best, and it worked out really well. I think it fits really well into the Apple's kind of their ethos almost. And it looked really good on Apple TV, I think. So it was just a good match. I really liked Central Park. Central Park was another Apple TV animation, and I think what they were making and what they are making at Apple TV is really cool. Yeah.
Especially Silo, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I read the books at first, and then I watched the series, and it was amazing. You know?
And I think that's neat. Yeah, and I think they've chosen a lot of interesting things to make, which is what I like. I think Apple's very they curate really well. Yeah.
We've talked already a little bit about that, but what were the main challenges of moving webcomic to TV? I've read one of your interviews. You said that one of the things was that the people,
the beings, yeah.
Beings, they didn't have names, and it's
right.
It's complicated.
It is complicated. They're all they pronouns. All of the beings are they pronoun, and they don't have names. So the idea was a little tricky when you're trying to make reference to another character. So there's a lot of relationships that we would use and say, this being is the manager of the restaurant. This being is the owner of the restaurant. And so some roles ended up being kind of the placeholders for names in some ways. But I also learned that you want to make sure the audience is tracking both an A story and a B story, and that can be a lot to learn, especially when there are no names involved. So you make sure the two A story and B story have a visual difference, like the setting is different. So you're looking at a different setting. Like we're in the city now, and the A story's in the city, B story's in the country. That kind of thing can help keep the viewer engaged, like, oh, they're in the country, they're in the city. That makes sense, yeah. And
also the TV series, it has the constant cast of voices, and also some guest voices,
right.
Guest voice actors. So what was the main casting process like? Because I think one of the being a fan of Community.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Danny Pudi is there.
Oh, Danny's great.
If you don't know who's Danny Pudi is, that's Abed from Community.
Yeah.
Because when I mentioned this to my wife, she says, who? And she said, Abed. And she said, yeah, that's Danny.
Abed, yes, I know. Danny's played many characters, but yeah, I think if you say Abed, a lot of people recognize right away. Danny had a voice that we felt immediately from the get-go. It probably was the first person we casted. Just this feels like one of the beings, his voice. And he was also working in a Community, obviously, so he had a connection with Dan Harmon. But when we listen to voices, one of the things for making animation is to make sure that voices would be really distinct. So we wanted to have some at a lower register, some at a higher register, some at a medium register, because that really helped with this whole no-name problem. There are no names, so we want to make sure they have distinct voices. In some cases, obviously, have accent. That they're speaking, saying words slightly differently. That really helps too. So making sure it was distinct, making sure the 5 main voices were really, really great. Also, Demi Adejowibe sings the theme song, and so that was really neat because Demi was one of the main 5 voices for this, and his voice in the theme song also sounded really great. So yeah.
What were the which guest voice actors are you proud of that you managed to cast?
We just saw Taylor, my wife, and I were just looking at the Wicked trailer. Have you seen the trailer for Wicked? Just amazing. Cynthia Erivo was a guest voice on A Strange Planet, and I had never heard. I was doing this recording booth thing via Zoom, but hearing Cynthia sing words and just say words that I had helped write. That was truly amazing because she's a world-class talent. And there was a little run where she was supposed to hum, and she said, "All right, I've hummed already. I'm going to whistle now." And it was just the most beautiful whistling I've ever heard. But it was just natural. It was like, oh, I'm going to try whistling, and of course Cynthia Erivo has the most beautiful whistling voice as well. So not surprising. Yeah,
that's very niche, but very nice talent.
yeah, to be able to whistle. I think there are a few people out there who make a living whistling, but it's not very many. My children, if they want to whistle for a living, I'll tell them to, make sure you also have a backup. Yeah, yeah.
It's don't quit your day job.
Yeah, make sure you continue to work on something else. Yeah.
How do you see the Strange Planet evolving in the future? Are there any other mediums in mind, like, I don't know, cinema maybe?
Yes, anything's possible. Back to this question about aliens. For you who believe in aliens, for those who don't, well, just don't answer. But if you believe in aliens, how many of you believe we'll make contact in the next 50 years? Yeah, you especially. Do you feel they've already come? You feel? You think they're already here, and I think that's what's interesting. That idea, they could be among us. There could be beings from other planets with us now, in this room. It could be, and I think that's what's an interesting question. I think that's part of where I think Strange Planet will go. That beings will eventually meet other beings. They haven't yet, so yeah. But I think it's part of what I wish for our country, our country, for our planet, that we will eventually have a beneficial relationship with other beings from another planet.
How surprised would you be that we make a contact and it looks eerily similar to what you draw before?
That would be very surprising, yes. I do think my version of the beings is based on a very old, traditional gray being. That's what they call it, the gray being. Decades and decades of drawings. I was just talking to Jack because he's from Las Vegas. So if you go to Las Vegas, if you go out to Roswell, New Mexico, there are a lot of these old drawings that look the exact same, really, the gray being. I think the movies that I like the most in terms of how they drew aliens, Arrival. Have you ever seen Arrival? I think that's one of the coolest look for a being of another planet. And I really like that movie because it's talking about communication, and also it portrays Earth as being the more violent planet, which I think might be the case. I think there might be beings that are kinder who come to us and realize we're actually a pretty violent planet, and we could learn a lot from those beings. That would be great.
Yeah, because we might be afraid of the alien invasion, but
right.
but we might be the ones who who will be doing the invading.
Many cases, and there's many sci-fi that makes that point, that we have people, aliens visit, and they see we have a lot of weapons pointed at our own planet, which is just an unusual thing to think about. Like, why is this planet at odds with each other so much? Yeah.
So what's next for Strange Planet TV series?
That's a great question. It's hard to say, but I think what is fun is when someone asks that question, there are infinite possibilities. To write anything you want is a really amazing part of animation that you can't do in live action as well. So animation, anything could happen, and that's why I'm being, I suppose, there's no commitment here to what will happen, because I want to leave all doors open. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to other webcomic creators or comic book writers looking to expand their work into new formats?
Well, I would say this. When you go down there and you look at Nobody Sausage is down, one of the creators has a booth. I think one of the cool things about the animation you see on TikTok now is that there's just this tremendous vibrance, there's this life, and I think there is a really neat world out there where you can draw, you can animate on your own, and you don't have to wait. Like, this is what I did. I actually ended up waiting and then teaming up with a big team of animators. But I think what's neat is that there are people doing that now without waiting for a team. They're trying and doing small animation and then making it better and better and better. And someone at that level, Nobody Sausage, has just incredible animation. And that can be intimidating when you look at that. But you don't have to start there. You can start small, do a small animation. So 10 years ago, I started to do that, and that led me to my first book, which was actually about New York City. I was living in New York City, and I did very, very basic animation. But it really helped me to get my name out there, because at the very least, it was moving. Even if it wasn't moving well, it was moving a little bit, and I think animation helps.
So that's about it, what I had for my questions. So are there any questions from the audience? There's the microphone over there. You can ask not only about the animated series, you can also ask about a comic itself.
Yes.
So if there are none, I have a question.
Go ahead.
And I think it's one of the questions that artists really hates the most.
Oh, sure.
So do you have your top 3, 5, 1, or 10 webcomics that you drew?
Oh, for me, yes.
Yeah,
ones that I've drawn. Well, there is one in the last hour you mentioned, where one being is realizing the other had a dream in which the other being betrayed them, and that's something that I think happens so much, and so many people have latched onto that idea. But I think what's interesting is describing that in the way I've described it in Strange Planet. I feel that's a very good element, or a very good example of what Strange Planet does. It helps you back out of the situation, helps you realize how strange it is, but how true. It's also true. So that's one of my favorite. That's what you're asking about, ones that I've drawn?
Yeah, the ones that you drawn.
Yeah. And then there's some non-Strange Planet ones that I've drawn elsewhere, where they're beings who are essentially, they're not beings. They're asking each other about if they've been helped, and the person says, yes, I've been helped every day of my entire life. I think what's neat is a lot of what I'm drawing now is based on my children. And I think everything I draw that's based on my children is now my new favorite, because they're my favorite. So that happens, yeah.
How do you keep the comics? Because one of the main things in comedy, whichever comedy you take, is it stand-up, cinema, TV, etc., it's relatability. How do you keep up with finding new ways to draw relatable scenarios?
It can be hard. So when I start, one of the questions I like to ask every morning is, what is trying to kill me today? And I think that's a really interesting question, because on Strange Planet, they call the suntan, they call, instead of suntan, they say star damage. And I think the sun is an example of something that is very passively trying to kill us every day. If you stay out long enough in the sun, you'll die. So it really doesn't actually kill you to get one sunburn, but it does over time. if you do a lot of sunburn. So I think there's another thing I call alcohol mild poison, and that's another example of something that actually is fairly dangerous that I interact with. You cannot drink too much of this or else you'll die. So a lot of what you interact with is actually very lethal, but only in small doses is how we interact with the sun or alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect point, actually. We have a question there? Yeah, we have a question.
A couple, if
Sure.
possible. So first of all, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that at the start you drew every day and posted every day. How to avoid burnout? Because
Sure.
as an artist, sometimes even if I want to draw, I sit down and my hands freeze because just some sort of a block just gets put on my mind. And how to avoid that?
Yeah, and then I should have added that as an exception. Don't burn yourself out. I definitely is important. I posted one comic every day for Strange Planet, 365 days in a row. But it's important to note I had some of those banked already. So I was posting them every day, but I had ones that I had already drawn in the past. So what I would say is be strategic about banking some ideas. In other words, bank meaning, save them, don't post them yet. Bank some ideas, and then if you want to do a long run of a bunch of days in a row, then you're ready, because there are going to be days when you don't have it. You don't have the ability of your hands. Maybe you have a headache or all these things that could happen. Your basement is being flooded. All these things. All these things will stop you from drawing comics. So, and if you feel at all too stressed, don't feel like you've lost everything if you need to take a break. That's not how it works. And I think there are a lot of wonderful examples of this out there where people have thought deeply about how not to burn out. And I really appreciate those people. Yeah.
And then the second question, like more from creative point of view, I've noticed that the beings, they do look like those typical like gray aliens.
Yes, yeah.
And was that a deliberate choice? And why didn't you go with a more like fantastical maybe alien design? Because yeah, they are very like, I understand like cute appeal, but there was like any conscious choice to reference this specific type of alien?
Oh, yes. Well, it actually relates to your first question. To say why I drew the beings so simply, I did draw them with 4 fingers at first, and I realized that was going to take too long, so I drew them with 3 fingers. And so overall, I just made very simple choices because that was going to make my job much easier. And really, so much of the humor of Strange Planet is in the language, is in the dialogue. So the visuals I knew were not as important. So just to keep it very basic. That also helped sell the idea to a new reader right away. Like, oh, these look like aliens. This is supposed to be about aliens. Someone who'd never read it before could see that, Yeah, but that's a really good question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have another question here. Yeah, please come over to the microphone.
Just would like you hear your opinion.
Yeah.
With AI tools, now you can create like comic in 20 minutes, for example.
Yeah.
Something like that. So where's the line between the artist, creator, and the thief, or how you call it?
I'm sorry, could you explain it one more time?
With AI tools, you can create...
Oh, AI, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
These days, you can create comics like in 20 minutes. For example, half an hour. It's simple comic. So where is the line between the thief and the creator?
Oh, the line between thief and creator. Oh, that's a very good question. So I will say this. I think anything that touches on AI is always going to be, this reminds me of 20 years ago when the internet was really starting to come everywhere, basically. 20 years ago, this was right before smartphones. And so we were trying to think about the internet and what is it going to be? If you look at commercials back in the USA about the internet, there are all these fantastical commercials about here's what I think the internet will be. So I think when people talk about AI, it's going to be a broad concept. So I want to keep what I'm saying very specific to generated art. I think that's the term that I think I would use. I think generated art that is quote unquote generated by AI. I think that is if it's scraping the internet and if it's soaking up art from all these real human artists to kick out a product, I think that's a good example of what we're talking about. That's you're taking art from other creators who are actually humans. So I think AI is a term that's used for a lot of other things as well. People writing things, people, there's all kind of things happening with AI that we'll continue to see how this is going to be everywhere. But generating art with one of these pieces of software, I think, is almost always going to be scraping the internet of artwork and kicking it out, and that's not what we want, really. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think we have one more question.
I wanted to ask, what helps you to create your original plots, like not to repeat some plot elements, what you have used before?
Yeah, what helps to create the original thought? Is that what you said? Yeah. So I would say one of the memories are one of the biggest pieces of assets that you have, the biggest asset. And I know this sounds funny, but looking at photos of your childhood, if you look at photos of your childhood, what's really interesting about that is you'll see things that you don't remember at all. And I remember my mom showed me this photo of me just puppies all over me. Like there were like at least 7 or 8 puppies. And I don't remember this at all. There are all these puppies, and I was a young child. And I think what's so beautiful there is that I am writing about someone. If I base a comic on that, I'm writing about someone. I don't think it's me, though. I think like the me that is me that I'm talking to you now, I don't have that as a memory. And I think that's a really neat thing. So looking at childhood photos is just a great example of here's something that is original because you're trying to approach it from the outside. You're like, what was this child feeling with all these puppies crawling all over him? And I looked so happy as that child. And so it was a really neat thing to see there's original thought within your own life that you can access just by looking at childhood photos. I think that's one example that I like. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We still have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, please do.
Sorry, I was attracted by your playful stand there.
Oh.
And, pleasant nonsense.
Yes, pleasant nonsense, yes.
Could you please elaborate a little bit about your wonderful texts and, and how you employ nonsense in them?
Sure.
Creativity and novelty to new phrases and maybe new quotations.
Yeah, and pleasant nonsense is really is from this one comic where the young being, the child, is being put to bed, and the parent being says, "Imagine pleasant nonsense," and it kind of says that instead of sweet dreams. And I think what's neat about this idea is pleasant nonsense is also kind of transcending that phrase, but also to the whole notion of Strange Planet. It's pleasant. It's meant to be sweet, and it's part of what I think about a lot, that we should allow ourselves to think almost completely useless thoughts. And I think if there's one thing that capitalism and the idea of capitalism can really get into our heads is that everything has to have a use. And everything has to be put to use. All right, how can we make money off of this? Or how can we build XYZ from this? But I think nonsense and pleasant nonsense, I think there's this beautiful natural way in which some of the Strange Planet comics hit on this idea. If I just sit and I pat a dog on the head for the entire life of the dog or the entire life of me, that's a beautiful life. You've actually done something good. And you should not be feeling like you had to think more useful thoughts than petting a dog. That's enough. As a human, you shouldn't feel that pressure, and I think that's a really helpful thing that Strange Planet helps me think through. Yeah.
And I think that's it. That's all the time we had today. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming. And thanks for Nathan W. Pyle. You can meet him in his booth down there. So he'll be there 5 minutes from now and until he runs out of potatoes.
Right. Yeah, until no more. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Round of applause for our guest. Thank you.
Thank you.